Today is an exciting day. Today is upgrade day. I have here 3 boxes that hold in them 3 amplifiers. Outlaw Audio amplifiers, model 2220. These are monoblock amplifiers, which means 1 amplifier, 1 speaker. That's right. Each one of these amplifiers is going to power its own speaker. Specifically, the 3 LCR speakers that are behind my screen right here, which you can't see because the screen's in the way. But why would I want monoblock amplifiers? If you watch my previous videos, you're probably thinking, well, George, you have an amplifier that has 11 channels in 1 amplifier. Why would you go to the trouble and take up so much space to have 3 amplifiers that power only 1 channel each? Well, it basically comes down to power and headroom. And what do I mean by headroom? Headroom is the available power that's sitting there just waiting to be utilized. Because when you're watching a movie or listening to music, your speakers aren't going full blast all the time. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's in the middle. And so the speaker is drawing watts, from the amplifier. And at any given time, they may get hit with a loud sound or, something happens suddenly. And if you've got the headroom, if you've got the available power just waiting, it'll hit it. But if you don't, then it's going to not be as good. The sound is going to be lacking. A good way to think of it is when I went out to M-Wave, I rented a car. I rented like a Nissan Sentra. But when I showed up to the counter, they said, oh, we don't have the Sentra, but we can give you a BMW at the same price. I was like, sweet, okay, all right. So I got in my BMW rental and I started cruising down the road, and I'm like, man, this doesn't really feel that much different than a Nissan Sentra. Like it rides about the same. I'm still going, 45 miles an hour on a 45 mile an hour speed limit road. Like, is this really that much different? Well, then I got out on the freeway and I was heading out onto the on-ramp, onto the freeway, and there was a semi coming up behind me, and I needed to speed up and to get in front of it. I punched it, and it did not respond like a Nissan Sentra. It got up and moved. I had the headroom underneath the hood that when I punched it, it hit it. That's how you can think of these monoblock amplifiers. They are going to be there when the speaker needs it. So these amplifiers are 200 watts per amplifier. And so you have 200 watts going into a single speaker. And not only that, but you also have 1 power supply per speaker. Because oftentimes a power supply is where manufacturers will cut corners, because they can still get that ratings or the watts rating on the packaging. They can still say 100 watts per channel, but then they cut back on the power supply, and so you're not really gonna get that when you hook up a bunch of speakers to that amplifier. But with these, 1 power supply, 1 speaker, and that's another added advantage of going with monoblocks. These are, like I say, rated at 200 watts each at 0.05 total harmonic distortion. Oh man, this is a nice looking amplifier. These things are heavy. The spec sheet says 16.5 pounds. That is heavy. I've picked up 7-channel AVRs that don't weigh much more than this. And this is just just the amplifier, and it's for just one channel. This is crazy. This is going to be awesome. Now, on the back, you've got the XLR input. You've got the RCA input with a nice little switch here to toggle between the two. You have the trigger input as well as trigger output, so you can daisy chain amps together, which is what I'm going to do. You have the speaker connections, and you've got the power switch, fuse, and then the power connector. And you also have a grounding plug, so to eliminate ground hum if you happen to pick that up, and also for added grounding, you can connect it up there. So yeah, this looks amazing. I am excited to get these all unboxed. Now, these amplifiers are $400 each, but if you buy them on the Outlaw Audio website, if you buy two, you bundle, then you save $100, which is a pretty sweet deal. But they also say that these run really cool and that you can stack them, which is good because that's what I'm going to have to do, because I don't have enough space in my rack to give them an individual shelf for each of them. So I am going to have to put all three of them on a single shelf, which, fingers crossed, hopefully they will fit. But yeah, these are sharp looking amps. These look really good. So let's get them installed. So quick explanation of what I'm currently running and then what it's going to look like when I'm done. So as I mentioned, I've got the AVM70 for my processor. And then I have 3 crown amps. These are 2 channels per amp for a total of 6 channels. And then I have this 11 channel Yamaha amp. Now, the Yamaha amp puts out 150 watts per channel, but I don't believe that's all 11 channels driven. That's probably 2 channels driven. Now the crown amps, they put out a little bit more. I believe they are 200 watts per channel, but again, they share a power supply across the 2 channels. You can bridge these and run just a single speaker off of them, and I have done that, and the difference was noticeable. And so ideally, I mean, yeah, it would be fantastic if I could just have a crown amp bridged for every single speaker in my theater, but cost, that's not going to work. So currently I am running my mains off of this crown amp, and then my surround speakers and my rear speakers are both, all 4 of those are being powered by these 2 crown amps. And then my mains, or sorry, not my mains, my center channel is running off of this Yamaha amp and then my 4 height speakers. When I get done, I'm going to have my LCRs, left, center, right, all powered off the monoblock amps from Outlaw. And then I'm going to have my rears, sides, and wides powered off these crown amps. And literally the only thing that's going to be running off of my 11 channel Yamaha amp will be my 4 height speakers, which that is overkill. And it's unfortunate that, this amplifier is, it's got 11 channels, and I'm only using it to power 4 height speakers, but that's what it is. That's what I've got. So let's get it hooked up. So I'm going to have my 4K player and my Apple TV are both going to be on the top shelf. And then I'm going to switch the second shelf. Instead of holding the 4K player, I'm going to use the second shelf to hold all of the Outlaw amps. So that looks good, just like that. Everything looks good. Okay, so I got the amps all hooked up, everything installed, the new calibration run. It's all dialed in. What is the verdict? Well, I gotta say, I am extremely impressed with these amps from Outlaw Audio. These things rock, and there are a few, actually quite a few reasons why I am so impressed with them. And then just a couple ideas, or I wouldn't, they're not even complaints, just more like suggestions, like, oh, it would be nice if a couple things like that. But yeah, let's get into why I love these amps so much. Okay, so first of all, they look great. They fit in the rack. They look really sharp. They just are so nice. And they have both XLR and RCA inputs, and we're going to get to that in a minute. I have something interesting about that. Okay, so previously my LCRs were connected to a Crown amp that was a 2-channel amp, and then also into my Yamaha 11-channel amp. And the center channel was connected into the Yamaha, and then the mains were in the Crown. And what I noticed under that configuration, when I ran the calibration software, when the Arc Genesis program ran the test tones, it's like the sound. If you've run it, and you know what I'm talking about. Then it shows you on a graph. It shows you where every single frequency registers on the volume scale, like how many dBs it is. And when the mains would run, they would be at a certain level, and then when the center would run, it would be at least 5 to 10 dB lower. And I attributed that to the fact that it was connected to the Yamaha. And because it was so much lower than the mains, then Arc Genesis had to boost the center by a lot to make up for that deficiency. So I was interested to see, once I connected all 3 speakers to these Outlaw Audio amps, how it would respond. And what I found is that right off the bat, there was an improvement. So on the center channel, it was more in line with what the mains were producing when they ran that test tone. However, it still wasn't quite on par. And I was like, wait a second, why is that one coming in a little bit lower? I mean, they're all identical speakers, identical amps. It shouldn't be, there shouldn't be a difference. And then I remembered that I'm a little short on XLR cables, and so I was running the center channel off an RCA cable. So I grabbed my microphone XLR cable just to temporarily connect it up over XLR, and then reran the test. All 3 perfectly in line. Now, I know there's a lot of debate online about, is RCA inferior to XLR? Is XLR really that much of an improvement? People test both, and they're like, I don't really hear a difference. Some people say I hear a big difference. Well, I saw measured data that showed that there was a difference between having the XLR cable versus the RCA cable. So as a result, I immediately got on Amazon and ordered a new XLR cable because I've got to have XLR on everything. But anyways, that's kind of an aside. That's not really particular to these amps. But now that I have all 3 speakers running off these amps, after I ran the calibration software, I cranked up some music, and the front soundstage, it just sounds amazing. And so obviously the dialogue, singing voices, dialogue on movies, that's primarily focused on the center channel. And when I cranked up the music, the singing just came through, just unlike how it had before. And yeah, Arc Genesis had boosted the center channel by quite a few dBs. I think it was up to like 5.5, 6 dBs boost. But now it's on par with the mains, and the center channel, it just comes through so well. So I'm happy about that. Now, there were 3 things that I specifically wanted to check, and these are not subjective. Well, less subjective. I wanted to know how much heat these amps generate. They claim the manufacturer claims that you can stack them, which means the bottom amp is going to heat rises. So any heat it produces and dissipates, it's going to go up and warm up the second one, and then it's going to be compounded. And when by the time you get to the third one, it's feeling the heat from not just itself, but the heat from the 2 amps below it. And that's the configuration I have, which is I stacked all 3 together. So how hot do they get? I listened to music cranked for an hour and a half, and then I went in there and I put my hand on the top amp. It was barely warm. I've felt AVRs that are like they're so hot you can't keep your hand on it. Like you touch it and you're like, oh my gosh, that is blazing hot. So I know how hot these electronics can get. It was barely warm. I was like, yeah, it's a little bit warm, like a little bit warm. I am super impressed. Like a low to almost no heat. It's just incredible. And then the second thing I wanted to check is speaker hiss. So Crown amps, and this is a known, I wouldn't even call it an issue. It's just it's just the reality of Crown amps, especially the ones that I have. They work really well. They've got lots of power, but you get speaker hiss. And fortunately, you can't really hear it until you get your ear up, 6 inches from the speaker. And so it's not a big deal when you're sitting in the main listening position. You can't hear the speaker hiss. And even then, if there's any sound at all going from music or a movie, then you for sure can't hear it. So it's not a big deal, but I did want to check and see, okay, how much speaker hiss are these Outlaw audio amps producing? So I'm very familiar with how much hiss I get from my Crown amps. So once I got the Outlaw audio amps hooked up, I put my ear right up to the speaker and I was like, wait, where is this? And I literally had to like move my head around because obviously I can't see the speaker because the screen is in the way. So I had to like move my ear around until I could finally find it. I'm like, oh, I think that's it. Oh yeah, I could barely hear it. I mean, it was essentially inaudible. It was so low. The speaker hiss was almost non-existent. I was even second guessing. I'm like, is that really it? Like, yeah. Super impressed on that. And then the third thing that I wanted to check, and again, this is a known issue with the Crown amps, is when you power everything off, the speakers produce a little pop, a little when they power off, and so I wanted to see, okay, do the Outlaw audio amps produce any pop when I powered it off? And with the Crown amps, if you're standing in the middle of the room and you power everything off, you can hear the pop. I stood up at the front of the room. I put my ear up to the speaker, so I'm like this far from the speaker, and I powered everything down. Dead silent. Nothing. I heard zero. Super impressed. It's awesome. So all the way around, these amps are great. I'm so happy to have them. I feel like my front soundstage is finally like done. I mean, I've got oodles of power and it's just a full front soundstage. It sounds incredible. It sounds amazing. Now, what are my complaints about the Outlaw audio amps? Again, I wouldn't even call this a complaint. It's just I had to think of something. I'm like, okay, there has to be something that we could do here. I would like it if they had if they had rack mount ears on them, like an optional, like when you buy network gear or audio gear, there will be screw holes on the side, and then it'll come with the optional ears that you can attach them if you want to, and then you can just bolt them right into the rack. It is awesome that they can be stacked, and so it's not a big deal. I just put in a 2U shelf, stacked them all up, away I go. But just kind of my OCD, it would be nice to have the rack mount option, because that would be just super clean. It would just be like choom, choom, choom. So that would be cool. But again, that's like being super nitpicky, and yeah, I'm kind of reaching there to find a complaint. But anyways, that is my verdict on the Outlaw Audio
2220 monoblock amps. I love them. Super impressed. Thanks for watching.